You know what hurts the most? It's not when strangers forget what you've done. It's when your own child rewrites history, like you were never part of the melody at all. I gave up a stage, a scholarship, a life in music, just to be his mom. And one day, over brunch, I learned he gave away the piano I built my life around, like it was nothing but extra furniture. It started with a choice. One nobody really saw, but changed everything. Back in '78, I was 23 and newly married. Juilliard had offered me a position, not as a student anymore, but as an adjunct. It was my dream. But I'd just found out I was pregnant with Jordan. Richard and I talked for hours that night. He said, "You'll go later, music waits." But deep down, I knew. Life doesn't press pause, so I stayed. I taught piano out of our small living room, 12 students a week, evenings filled with metronomes, chalkboard theory, and homemade cookies for kids who couldn't keep rhythm. Then Jordan grew, and I gave more. Time, energy, sleep, vacations we couldn't afford, but still took for his sake. When Richard passed, it was just me and the boy I once rocked to sleep beside the piano bench. The house he lives in now? That didn't come from nowhere. When he and Tessa got engaged, he called me late one night, nervous about the market, down payments, closing costs. I didn't hesitate. I sold a patch of land behind my old studio and wired $85,000 into his name. He said thank you. Tessa sent flowers. No one asked me to co-sign the deed, and I didn't push. "It's your home now," I said, "but you know where it came from." I thought I was giving him roots. What I didn't realize was I was slowly erasing my own place in the story. Every day, I walked past that Yamaha C7, polished, tuned, lived in. The same bench I sat on when Jordan took his first steps. He doesn't know this, but the keys are uneven because I wore the left pedal thin, rocking him to sleep when colic kept him crying all night. That piano raised him just as much as I did, but soon, I'd learn he didn't see it that way. Not anymore. Not when convenience called louder than memory. And what he gave away wasn't just an instrument. It was me. I hadn't been over to Jordan's house in months. Not because we weren't on speaking terms, but because time has a way of stretching out when no one makes the effort. Still, I was surprised when he called that Friday. "Mom, we're doing a little brunch Sunday, just family, nothing fancy." That's how it always starts, right? Just family, nothing fancy. When I stepped through the front door, the smell of maple bacon hit first. Sweet, warm, like nostalgia trying too hard. Tessa met me with a smile that felt just a little too fixed. The kind of smile you wear when you're hosting someone you didn't expect would come. The parlor had been rearranged. The rug I gave them was still there, but the wall where the piano used to sit was bare. Not covered, not decorated, just vacant. I stopped. "Where's the piano?" Jordan looked up from the kitchen island, mid-slice through a croissant. "Oh, we gave it to Mara, Tessa's sister." I blinked. "You gave it?" Tessa chimed in without missing a beat. "She just moved into a new apartment and needed something with character. The piano fits her space so perfectly. It's got that aged vintage vibe she loves." Jordan added, "It wasn't really being used, Mom. I mean, it was just sitting there." Have you ever felt your stomach turn without warning? Like someone took your history and donated it to Goodwill? I stood in that perfectly curated room. White chairs, gold-accented brunch trays, linen napkins, and realized my son had given away the last thing in this house that still sounded like me. "Wasn't it tuned last winter?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "Yeah, maybe. No one really plays anymore." I didn't answer, because I knew if I opened my mouth, the grief would come out sideways. So I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee I didn't want, and gripped the cup like it could keep me standing. Across the table, they laughed about countertops and honeymoon destinations. I nodded, smiled, played along. That's what mothers do, right? But I want to ask you, have you ever felt like a guest in a room you helped build? Let me know in the comments if you've ever been in that kind of silence, the kind that hums with all the things no one's acknowledging. Because that morning, something shifted. They thought I was just quiet, but really, I was breaking. And the space where that piano used to sit, it looked a whole lot like the space they'd cleared for me to disappear. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept walking past the same corner of the living room where the piano used to sit before I moved it into storage last year, just for safekeeping. My hands itched like they needed something to press, to hold, to feel rooted again. I sat down on the old bench anyway. It creaked beneath me, same as always. And in the drawer below, where I kept all my sheet music, I found it. Jordan's first recital piece. Minuet in G. His tiny scrawled notes still in the margins, my red pencil marks beside them. Watch posture. Breathe. I remember the way he trembled before the curtain lifted. I held his hand so tightly backstage, afraid he'd run. And when he finished, all teeth and nerves, he looked to the audience. And then to me, not for applause, for approval. He used to care what I thought. Now, he gives away the instrument we built our rhythm around like it was an afterthought, like it didn't carry 40 years of memories and my entire identity inside its frame. But here's what hurts most. It's not Mara's fault. It's not even Tessa's tone-deaf sense of aesthetics. It's Jordan. He didn't just give away a piano. He gave away a part of me. Without asking, without even wondering if I'd notice. And I realized something chilling. He didn't see it as mine anymore. To him, that piano had already become a leftover, like I had. Something sitting quietly in the corner too long, out of tune, out of place. You know, there's a special kind of heartbreak that comes when the people you raised look at your sacrifices and see clutter. I didn't say anything to him. Not that night, not yet. But something shifted inside me. A part of me started to pack itself up, not physically, but emotionally. I stopped trying to explain. I stopped showing up uninvited. I stopped waiting for him to remember who helped him get here. He didn't ask, so I wouldn't tell. But silently, I began gathering the things that still belonged to me, including the truth. Because what he saw as an old piece of wood collecting dust, I knew, was the last place I ever felt like I belonged. It was almost comical, the way the universe leaves breadcrumbs when you're finally ready to see them. The next morning, I opened the filing cabinet in my bedroom. Bottom drawer, old manila folders, most of them untouched since Richard passed. I was looking for my original music certificates. Some part of me wanted to feel like a musician again, but instead, I found it. The purchase agreement for Jordan's house. Signed in my name, my funds, my signature on the wire transfer. $85,000 paid in full from my account to the seller. And then it hit me. I never signed over the deed. They'd been living there for 3 years, decorating, renovating, giving away things that weren't theirs, without ever checking who actually owned the roof above them. That house was still mine. I sat with that knowledge like someone who's just remembered they have keys to a room they'd been locked out of. Not long after, I called my lawyer. She's sharp, kind, and not easily rattled. I told her everything. The piano, the brunch, the transfer, the silence. She didn't flinch, just said, "We can pull the transaction, quietly. Just file a hold on any title transfer. It's your property. You're within your rights." Then I called Delaney Logistics. They specialize in private retrieval of heirlooms. Quiet, secure, no drama. I emailed them a scanned photo of the piano's serial number, the original purchase slip from 1978, and one recent picture I'd taken years ago. Jordan playing, maybe 9 years old, tongue poking out in concentration. It was all I needed. They confirmed everything within 48 hours. The piano would be removed discreetly from Mara's apartment. No police, no confrontation. And brunch? Well, it was scheduled for Sunday. I didn't say a word to Jordan. I just baked my usual cranberry tart, wore my softest scarf, and brought my calmest face. And as I stepped inside their house again, I knew something they didn't. While they poured mimosas and bragged about backsplash tile, I was already taking it all back, quietly, legally, and completely. Because I'd finally remembered. I was never just the background music in their life. I'd been the composer all along. The movers came early on a Wednesday. No noise, no fuss. They wrapped the piano like a treasure and handled it with the kind of care I hadn't seen in years. By noon, the Yamaha C7 sat in the front room of my condo, right by the bay window where the morning sun filtered in like forgiveness. It looked right there, like it had always been waiting for a space that matched its silence. I didn't call Jordan, didn't text, didn't explain. They'd figure it out soon enough. Between the bank rejecting their mortgage extension and the HOA letter notifying them the deed was under review. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about retrieving what was mine, not just legally, but spiritually. That weekend, I took a walk past the old community center. I hadn't stepped inside since Richard's memorial. The place smelled like pencil shavings and worn-out carpet. There was a notice on the board. Volunteer piano tutor needed. Beginner students, Saturdays 10-12. I stared at it for a long time. And then I tore off the number. The next week, I sat at an upright Baldwin. Keys a little sticky, middle pedal stiff, but I didn't mind. A girl named Sophie, maybe 12, was my first student. Her fingers were clumsy, but her eyes lit up when she got a chord right. That was the first time in years I felt useful without being used. Back home, I opened my old music journal. The last entry was dated 2003. Before the cancer scare, before Jordan's wedding, before I'd stopped playing altogether. I picked up a pen and wrote one sentence. Legacy isn't what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you reclaim while you're still here. Then I played. Not for anyone, not for applause, just for the feeling of hearing my own hands again. You know, they thought I was retreating, but what I was really doing was rebuilding. Not the life they wanted for me, but the life I'd put on hold for far too long. And this time, every note was mine. The silence came first. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that fills a hallway after someone realizes the door they took for granted is no longer theirs to open. 3 days after the piano was retrieved, Jordan called. I let it ring. When the voicemail came through, I didn't press play. I already knew the tone. Confused, wounded, just a little indignant. But by then, the deed had already been frozen. The refinance on the house stalled. The lender? Notified. Legally, I hadn't taken anything that didn't belong to me. Emotionally, that was a different story. The next week, I hosted a small recital for my students at the community center. Parents brought folding chairs. There were lemonade cups and crooked name tags and applause that felt sincere. At the end of the program, I played one solo. Nothing fancy, just a short piece I'd written decades ago, back when Jordan was still small enough to crawl under the piano and nap at my feet. When I finished, there were no cheers, no standing ovation, just quiet. The kind that feels like respect. That night, Jordan came by unannounced. He didn't knock right away, just stood outside the gate holding a brown envelope in both hands like it might bite him. Eventually, I opened the door. He looked different, smaller, somehow. Like someone who'd finally felt the absence of something they thought they'd always have. "Mom," he said, voice tight. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I looked him in the eye, calm. "Because, Jordan, When someone gives away what's sacred to you without asking, what's left to say? He didn't respond. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. No excuses, just 4 words, written in his old, looping handwriting. I didn't understand. I'm sorry. I folded it, not out of anger, just closure. I forgive you, I said, but some things, once taken, don't return the same. He nodded, eyes glossy. We didn't hug. We didn't promise holidays or dinners or anything that would wrap it all up with a neat bow. Some stories don't end with reunions. Some end with boundaries, and that's enough. These days, the Yamaha sits in my sunroom, freshly tuned. Students come and go. I make tea. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I play just for me, just because I still can. And Jordan? He knows where I am, but now, he also knows what it cost to forget. And now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to reclaim something they thought you'd just let go of? A memory? A legacy? A space in someone's life? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading. And if you're still listening, maybe it means you've held on to something worth reclaiming too.